Now, if you think the first hour was a trip into Fortiana, second hour is going to get even better. This is the spooky hour. I'm going to do it like the tarot. You see, I'm doing it like the tarot as well. First is the male, second is the female. There's the transitional period, and that's why I picked the song Shadow of a Doubt by some bridezillas. She's getting married in the morning. She's getting married. Why? Why do women who are perfectly balanced, in most cases, not all, perfectly balanced human beings become absolute monsters when that piece of highly compressed carbon is placed upon their head, and they say to some guy, I do! Why do these women go crazy? In the Islamic world, there's long been a belief that the jinn, the demon of the Islamic world, or shall we say, the fairy, which would be a better analogy, because jinns are more closer to fairies. Our ancestors lived in terrorists. Don't ever anyone ever tell you that fairies are like Tinkerbell, our Celtic, Nordic, European ancestors were scared the pisto out of them when they thought they were worried the fairies came anywhere near them. Well, the jinn is the Islamic version. That's the same thing. Okay, now, I'm not saying these exist as creatures or beings. I believe everything is an aspect of human consciousness. I believe that human consciousness is the most powerful force in the universe because it creates the universe through creating a novelty. That's why I take seriously that it could be destroyed by the transhumanists and the psychopaths in charge. I'm always telling you to protect your consciousness. Build that firewall around your psyche and build your own psyche because there's no end of people, organizations and groups and experts who will gladly do it for you. So she gets this ring on her finger, and according to Islamic tradition, a specific type of jinn that lives between the day and the night is resident inside this piece of glass. Islamic world, it's been long believed that cut diamonds contain the jinn, the pathological demon. The jinn in the diamond was first brought into popular canon in the story of King Solomon, who contained a jinn inside a diamond ring, which helped him build the temple in Jerusalem. So the story goes. There are more conspiratorial and bigoted elements within Islam who say that the reason why De Beers floods the world with cut diamond rings is because they're trying to infect the West with the jinns. Unless, if the theory of the jinn inside the cut diamond, and we think of, go back to the analog signal again, you think of the way the diamond is cut, right? Those shapes. It's not a million miles from how a antenna is tuned. And we know that crystals, all crystals, pick up radio signals. I've been working with an experiment while using a crystal inside a glass jar, which I've been putting in a haunted house. Actually, a house is supposed to be a building that's actually supposed to contain jinns that were brought from the Middle East. And I will at some point in the future be presenting you with the findings and the bizarre audio recordings that I'm getting, but the crystal does pick up signals. So you have, and if you have it cut into certain shapes at angles, you have an antenna, okay? A diamond is basically a worthless piece, a worthless crystal. They're very, very common. There's nothing rare about them. De Beers just created a market mystique of the diamond, and for whatever reason, she's got to have, in most cases, that little piece of glass, little piece of diamond on her finger. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, you know. And then she says, I do. The thing is on, and then she goes absolutely batshit crazy. Her whole existence is consumed by the wedding day. With a man she may not even love, or have, even if she loves him, she completely forgets about him. She's the center. She is the queen. In a with the Almighty inside a synagogue or whatever takes place, government building. And that's her big day. And we've all been to weddings. I absolutely hate. Now, I'm not saying weddings are not. There's lots of nice people that get married, okay? And they have simple, basic weddings that it's not about her special day or any that shite. It's not about that. They do want to get married, but they don't, but they don't go mental and have this like dream wedding and the white limos and all this stuff. And, these women become almost like psychopathic, some of them. That's why they always pick bridesmaids that are frumpy and unattractive because they don't want a beautiful girl to outshine them on their wedding day. Even their best friend. And they put them in disgusting outfits and they make them into fools, clowns, while she's there as the queen. And I'm very fascinated by this whole thing. Because I'm surprised that more men don't say, I'm not getting married and walk away from these women as they become more increasingly pathological as the wedding day approaches. But it does make you wonder if some kind of pathological force is pouring into them through that tuned arrangement of the antenna on their finger from the beers. So I went looking online and I found some bridezilla stories, and they really are quite incredible. Most of these come from Reddit, and I'll just read some to you. One bridezilla. Oh, that's another thing about weddings as well. Do you ever notice that now the big one is for the fellas to all get married in kilts? Now, only certain fellas can pull a kilt off, okay? Basically, kilts only look good on good-looking guys. They don't look good on anyone else. That's just something about it. They look like a skirt on someone else. And you have to have the right legs for them. I've got a fabulous pair of legs. It's one of the few things I actually have. And I look good in a kilt. But I see so many of these wedding photographs that are absolutely hilarious of these scrawny legs sticking out, and she and her big, and it's supposed to look, he thinks he looks like Braveheart. And he looks like a girl in a dress. I'm seeing more and more of that. It's another one too. Oh, we have to get you in kilts. Anyway, I knew a woman who was a bridesmaid in a relative's wedding. She was married and had been trying to get pregnant for a while. Finally, her and her hubby got lucky, and she conceived. The bridezilla got furious and kicked her out of the wedding because she would be pregnant. 3 months later, sadly, the woman miscarried. The bride called her with a response along the lines of, "Good. Well, now you know you'll be in the wedding." Needless to say, she did not attend it. That's a bridezilla who kicked out a bridesmaid out of her wedding party because she was pregnant and actually would have ruined the photographs. Just think about that. I attended a wedding of a family's friend's daughter, so didn't really know her. It was a nighttime reception, so well, probably was a nightmare too. From 6 p.m. to 11 or 12. The ceremony immediately preceding. When we went to the reception, we were expecting something to be set up, but there was nothing. Later we found out that there was no food for the 120 guests, but rather a cheese spread, fruit platter, and vegetables with dip. Oh, I say. After an hour, people were really hungry, and some people started to leave because they were expecting to be fed and didn't want to stay. When they found this out, she ran across the room in her dress to the doors, screaming about how everyone is ruining her wedding, and is screaming, "Bride's day, bride's way," in such a scene that her father peeled her off the door. Don't know where her husband was, probably cowering. And people who didn't know her that well all left. I heard through the grapevine that she was inconsolable the whole night, got trashed and threw up. Oh well, bride's day, bride's way. So she barricaded the guests from leaving because there was no dinner, screaming bride's way, bride's day. You see, this is not normal behavior. Another one. This situation made me lose one of my best good friends. My friend is getting married in October. We were friends for about 8 years. This is a common story. She asked me to one of her bridesmaids, and I happily obliged. Little did I know she was going to be a big-headed ego bridezilla. See, it comes out of nowhere. The little ring does it. She demanded that everyone wear these hideous dresses that we had to pay for. I was okay with this since it didn't cost that much. She also demanded that all the girls dye their hair because she could be the only blonde one there. I have naturally blonde hair, and I'm not going to dye it for a day. She got pissed at me and said that I would dye my hair, that if I wouldn't dye my hair and replace me, she'd replace me with a girl that she's known but only recently became friends with. They used to talk crap about each other behind each other's backs. Next, she had the nerve to ask everyone at her bridal party to pay $80 guests, $120 for me for my boyfriend, for food, a buffet of barbecue. She also expected a present that was to be valued at $50. She sent all this out via Facebook. I sent her a message back and told her I would either pay for the food or a present and for her to choose. I got a hard copy invite recently and realized that the date was on the same date my boyfriend is doing his Tough Mudder competition, whatever that is. I chose that over the wedding. Another, I just have to read them. My best friend, who was normally very sweet and quiet, was quite rude when she got married. First she told me when I would be having her bridal shower, set the date without consulting me in any way at my house and what I would be served. I was in the middle of my honours year for my bachelor's degree in another city, 15 hours drive away, and she set the date for right in the middle of the exams. She also planned on making all sorts of things for the wedding to save money. Aisle runner, centerpieces, arch, veil, etc. I came into town the night before the wedding, and she says to me, I didn't have time to get anything made, so I need you to do it for me. I stayed up all night sewing and arranging flowers while she slept. It was in the winter, and when we arrived at the hall, the floor hadn't been cleaned and was covered in salt stains. There was nothing to clean it but a bucket and a cloth. So after staying up working all night, I had to clean the floor on my hands and knees. I was exhausted and hated every minute of her wedding. I didn't talk to her for months after that. I'm surprised you even had anything to do with her. The last one, I promise. I have been a bridesmaid in a few weddings now, but two of the brides, neither of which I speak much with much anymore, were total monsters. One of them had like 4 engagement parties, see, the ring, and 3 showers. The extras were basically thrown by the people that she had made feel guilty because they hadn't attended another. Afterwards, and I assume after the wedding, she basically made a mental shit list based on her expenses of presents. I hope to God the $250 of overpriced Rococo stuff that I bought her in Nordstrom was good enough. I guess the sign of craziness was almost a year before the wedding. That's probably when she got the ring. When we did wedding dress fittings. I love how brides-to-be are always like, you can wear it at other events even after the wedding. There's no way in hell that I would be caught dead in a Pepto-Bismol colored dress. I love that. A Pepto-Bismol colored dress that makes me look like I was shot out of a giant Barbie. Brilliant. And the $325 price tag didn't help either. Did I mention that even though her family is filthy rich, at the time, 3 of us bridesmaids were in grad school with 1 teacher and 1 was a jobless single mother? Not exactly rolling in the dough, more of that to come. Her bachelorette party, which as bridesmaids we were obligated to pay for and ourselves, was by her request in New York City at a super expensive hotel plus airline tickets across the damn country. During the trip, she and her maid of honor didn't speak over a fight involving which restaurant we were we were going to go to, and she made another bridesmaid cry. We also actually uttered the phrase, in case you have all forgotten this week, she actually also uttered the phrase, in case you have all forgotten, this weekend is all about me. At least twice when we weren't paying enough attention to her. Besides throwing a fit and kicking her cousin off a greeting duty because of a tiny part of tattoo stuck out from her shoe strap, her wedding went by pretty smoothly. Thank God for her Xanax pushing mother. Needless to say, none of us are that close anymore. And these stories are very common. Very common. In fact, I would say that bridezillas are probably more common than non-bridezillas. It's just amazing how poorly people behave. And it's always, she's the start of it. She, the queen for a day is the start of it. It's just amazing. And, it's almost like, and maybe they are, demonically possessed. That's why I made that graphic, because it's, again, if the Islamic idea of the jinn, or the demon living inside the engagement ring, is true. Now, I'm not saying I believe in these things. I'm saying they're all aspects of human consciousness. I'm totally down with the Manly P. Hall idea of the demon is really an aspect of our consciousness that's somehow pathologically manifested as a kind of a self-haunting tulpa, to put it that way. So, I'm not saying these are other entities or anything like that. I'm saying when I use these terms, and when I talk about consciousness, and I talk about entities, and not entities, demons, jinns, I'm talking about there are aspects of human behavior. And we are a kind of a bioelectrical computer, very prone to, electronic rays to frequencies and so on. Does that engagement ring do it? A good experiment would be that for a couples who decide to get married and don't go with that De Beers engagement ring, does the bridezilla thing happen at all? I can always remember this girl that I worked with in New York years ago, and when she got engaged, she literally pointed the engagement ring at me like it was a weapon. Like it was, a feckin' ray was going to fly out of it. It was like that the hand was held in this theatrical matter. Behold my piece of worthless glass that I made some schmuck spend, 2 months salary for? The other marketing thing. And behold, I am betrothed. I am engaged. That's what it was like. Needless to say, all those types, they're always the fourth. They're the ones who get divorced the first. And there you have it. It's also the mental case stuff that they put in all these magazines, all these wedding magazines. It just drives the women the mad. There was recently a story that I got a lot of flack over that I posted on Facebook of some girl who got married, and the groom had dumped her right before the wedding, like a couple of weeks before. So she decided to have a symbolic wedding with the bridesmaids. No, she made sure to make sure that they were all less pretty than her, mind you. And her parents, her parents went along with her, and took photographs of them, put them on the internet. And they destroyed their dresses with paint. And it was supposed to be and in the last photograph, she's given the finger to her ex, the boyfriend that didn't show up. I was looking at these photographs and I was thinking, thank God he escaped. Thank God he got away. Because if this is how she reacts, that's not normal. And he probably left her because she was a psychotic bridezilla, and her behavior with this kind of mock wedding she had not only kind of proved that, but she's going to regret the fact that she put that on the internet and made a big deal of it on not social media, actually on the internet, big internet magazines, that no guy is going to want her now because she looks batshit crazy. That was a dance remix version of Say Hello, Wave Goodbye by Soft Cell. In a beautiful segue, I had the last story planned in advance, and in a phenomenal, synchronistic, magical happenstance today, my mate Joshua from the band Brookhouse posted an article to his wall that could not stitch that's the previous Bridezilla story and the next story more perfectly together. Let me just read the story for you. The next half an hour, I'm going to hopefully it's blown my mind, it'll blow your mind. For the past 75 years, a tiny bridal shop in Mexico has been subject to some pretty crazy rumors. Tales of supernatural fiddling abound and whispered of dismembered voices, mysterious cold spots, and even the occasional darting shadow seen from the corner of the visitor's eye. But the creepiest rumor centers around a bridal mannequin sitting in the window, a highly that many say is a perfectly preserved corpse. The tale begins on March 25th, 1930, when the odd-looking mannequin was first placed in the window of La Popular, one of the most well-known bridal shops in Chihuahua, Mexico. Almost immediately the locals knew that something wasn't quite right with the figure. Before long, tales of the stunning mannequin began to spread far and wide, and visitors trekked all over to see the intricate details in the doll, from the individual wrinkles in the hand, and they have to be seen to be believed. I'll have the links to this posted in New Symbols Media, to the real human hair, to the mesmerizing gaze of her glass eyes. It was almost as if the figure was a real person. Sorry, that was my fault. I hit the bloody Skype disconnect red button when I was going to scroll down the page. Anyway, it was almost like the figure was a real person frozen in time. Eventually, people began to notice the similarities between the mannequin nicknamed La Pascualita and the daughter of the populous proprietor Pascualita Esperanza. According to legend, Esperanza's daughter had tragically passed away on her wedding day, the victim of a black widow spider bite. Local whispered that the beautiful figure in the window was in fact the embalmed body of Esperanza's daughter. More and more the details began to make sense, and the townspeople became outraged. Of course, he formally denied the allegations, but at that point it was too late. The legend was set in stone. Today, La Pascualita still sits in the window of the Popular, and the rumors have only become more pervasive. Of all the employees who work in the Popular bridal shop, only 2 are allowed to change her clothing, and only behind closed doors. It is a practice that makes some of the employees pretty uncomfortable. Every time I go near Pascualita, my hands break out in a sweat, said one shop worker. Her hands are very realistic, and she even has varicose veins in her leg. I believe she's a real person. So do I after seeing the close-up photograph of her hands with the wrinkles and fingerprints. Other workers say they've come to the shop in the morning only to find that she has changed positions on her own, or complained that she would watch them with the unsettling gaze as they tended the store. 75 years later, some have come to revere Les Pascualita as a saint, leaving candles and offerings in front of the windows. Some asked for good fortune, but most came to see her seeking guidance of matters of love. Many brides even let Pascualita decide on their gowns for them, simply choosing whatever dress she is wearing at the time. So is the strange mannequin real preserved course of an ill-fated bride? Skeptics say no, pointing to the difficult upkeep to stopping a corpse from decaying. But those who have seen her in person walk away believers, and I'm a believer after seeing the photographs. and very creeped out at that, and I'm very creeped out, and you will too when you see these photographs on newsymbolsmedia.tv. After all, how strange is it for a store to keep the same mannequin for nearly 8 decades and a shroud of its undressings in secrecy. To pay your respects, you can visit yourself. Now, this story couldn't be more perfect for the next story involving the wife of the famous Argentinian dictator Juan Perón, Eva Peron of the Evita musical fame. Now, in a small luxury upstairs apartment in Madrid's elegant Puerto de Hierro district, a beautiful woman lay on a gold-decorated bed. She wore a long dress, and her golden hair was coiled at the nape of her neck. Her 77-year-old husband, Juan Perón, sat nearby. The ousted dictator of Argentina had still regarded his wife as the main source of advice and inspiration, even though in that summer of 1971, Eva Peron had died of cancer at 33, nearly 20 years earlier. Embalmed by a secret process costing over $200,000 back then, and claimed to preserve her for all eternity, Peron maintained that she regularly spoke from the dead to tell him what he must do to return his country he had ruled for so long. Other members of the family also insisted they had heard her whispered voice and seen her eyes opening and lips moving, despite the fact that she had been pronounced dead since 1952. Eva Peron had died in agony and lay in state while 2 million people filed past her coffin. Later, on instructions from Peron, she was embalmed by the world's leading expert, Dr. Pedro Ara, in order to keep the dictator's pledge that Eva will never die. Then Peron was disposed, and the body was smuggled out of Argentina and eventually placed in a grave in Milan, in Italy, under a false name, until finally in 1971, her widower succeeded in getting custody of her body and moving it to Spain. Eva's sister, Marita, later spoke of the night when little Eva arrived in Madrid. Even after all those years, she looked as though she was in a deep sleep, the wife he had seen in 19 years. We all heard crying, and then we heard a voice which was little more than a whisper. I would know that voice anywhere, and would swear it was Eva's. There was a kind of haze over the coffin, but I could see her lips and eyes moving. I am absolutely certain of that. Peron also declared that he felt the spirit of Eva returning to us at that precious moment, and that she told him he would return to Argentina and take back control of the country. Afterwards he claimed to have got constant spiritual guidance from my beloved one, either by word of mouth or spiritual message. It was Eva, he claimed, who told him at the time that it was right for him to return to Argentina. He was elected president for a third term in 1973 and died the following year, and took silver-mounted photographs of Eva to be put beside his bedside. A friend remarked, "The feelings of Isabella, his third wife, can only be imagined." It's claimed that not only in Madrid did Eva Peron make her ghostly presence felt. During her years in Milan's Musacco cemetery, under a headstone announcing the grave to be that of a 40-year-old Italian widow named Maria Maggi, Eva Peron once again became the subject of fevered speculation. It was claimed that her frail figure, dressed in white lace, could be seen flitting about the cemetery on dark nights. One witness, a policeman on patrol past the cemetery, told of seeing a weeping woman with long golden hair. I asked if there was anything wrong, but she didn't answer, and the next moment she had vanished. Shown a photograph of Eva Peron, the officer replied without hesitation, "Yes, that is the woman I saw." Another woman visiting a cemetery to put flowers on a relative's grave said she was approached by a small, fair-haired woman with a thin face, who told her, "I am separated from the man I love by a whole ocean. How can I rest until we are together again?" Once again, when shown a photograph, the woman claimed to identify the stranger as Eva Peron. Today, Eva and Juan Peron are buried together in a family vault in Buenos Aires. She still lies in an embalmed, timeless, but in the past decade, less than a dozen people have seen the body. In a book on the strange, mysterious life and death of one of the world's most powerful and influential women, her sister, Marita, is quoted as saying, "There were 6 people in the room when Eva returned from Madrid, and they have all sworn that she came back from the dead to speak to her husband." And Juan always maintained that he would never have returned to Argentina had he not been assured by Eva that it was a wise thing to do. You can say that Argentinian history was changed by what went on in that Madrid room on that very special summer's day. And that was written by someone called John Martin here in Ireland. This story is so strange because I will post the pictures on newsymbolsmedia.tv of her body 19 years after she died, lying beside her husband who's in a closed coffin, and her body is perfectly preserved. This phenomenon of the famous corpse coming back to life temporarily or having these kinds of after-death phenomena of talking or appearing is not uncommon. Now, if you come from the point of me thinking about the transference of consciousness and emotions, you think of 200,000 people marching past the body of this person and putting their emotional energy, their life memories, all things for their life, their patriotism, their sensations, their feelings, all the chemical fluctuations they had in their body are being poured into this corpse. Nervous to pick it up and become animate. Is that really so far out there? When Michael Collins was shot during the Irish Civil War, his body lay in state at the Pro Cathedral in Dublin. And again, the same number, 200,000 people, walked past the corpse. Again, pouring all their emotions into it. People who had fought under his command in the Civil War and the War of Independence, as well as ordinary Irish people. When the painter John Lavery, famous Irish painter John Lavery, who was a personal friend of Michael Collins, wanted to paint him lying in state in that remarkable painting where you see him lying in full uniform with the tricolour on him and a crucifix held in his hands. Lavery said, and it was confirmed by the 4 soldiers who were guarding the body overnight, because remember the Civil War was still raging in Ireland at that time. Lavery said that, quote unquote, during the night, now and again, Mick would start talking. His mouth would open and he would move. Now, are these post-mortal convulsions? Possibly. But a post-mortal convulsion is not supposed to happen after a body has been embalmed. And yet, this had happened with both Eva Peron and Michael Collins, who had this enormous amount of psychic energy poured into them while the body lay in state. Lavery, and I cannot find the document anywhere. I do have the book where he talks about Mick, as he says, Mick, as he called him, opening and talking while he was corpse lying in state. But he also, on a radio documentary on Irish radio about 20 years ago, I distinctly heard a relative of Lavery saying that there was a blue mist over the coffin, and this was also witnessed by the Guard of Honour, the National Army troops who were inside the cathedral protecting the body. Just like what had happened with Eva Peron. Now, when the Eva Peron body was brought back to Argentina, the Argentinian government refused to believe it was her. They thought it was a model or a sculpture or a wax figure. And what they did was they cut one of her fingers off to see if there was a bone and flesh inside, which they did, and found out that she was perfectly preserved inside. Her bone, a bone marrow, and her muscles and all her nervous system was perfectly preserved inside. This is a very deep stuff. I know it's late at night for some of you, and you're probably feeling a bit scared listening to this, but that's also part of the reason I put this show together, because I believe that we've lost this ability to take people to the shadow side and the dark side late at night and have them a little nervous, because those things are important. We must walk on the dark and on the wild side too. So if you're a little scared and a little freaked out by this, don't be, because don't worry about it, because these are important things. I want to trigger this kind of emotion because they're important. They're important things, and that I grew up with. I grew up in an Ireland where I used to hear stories and ghost stories about the Banshee. I used to hear the story of my great-grandmother who was used to feed the seagulls across the river from the Guinness Brewery, funny enough, on Burb Street in Dublin, right on the Liffey. And when she died, she was like, the family were around her, and the priest was giving the last rites, and a gigantic seagull flew into the apartment window, stayed at the end of the bed for a second, and then flew away. The seagulls came to say goodbye. And I grew up with these kinds of stories. I grew up with the stories of the Banshee. See, the older people I grew up with were from a different kind of Ireland than what I grew up in. They were the last connection to the Joycean Ireland. You see, I grew up in the time that I grew up in Ireland, there was still a Victorian element to the society. Older people had lived through the Victorian time. So there we have it. Is it possible? Is it believable that the psychic energy of thousands of people filing past the corpse of a person they had lifelong memories with and poured their psychic energy into that corpse, can they somehow reanimate that individual as a tulpa? And I will leave you with this one final thought before I say good night. Jimmy Savile laid in state in a hotel in Leeds, and thousands of people did the same. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Paula, over there in Florida. Thank you, Anne, over in Los Angeles, for being an amazing person up all these networks for us. Thank you all for listening. This is the Velocity of Now 2016. 2015 on the 22nd of January, and the world is a far more stranger and mysterious place than we can ever realize. We are living in a dream, and we are living in the dream time, as the Australian Aborigines say. So you must be very careful of your thoughts, of your consciousness, of your expressions, and what you pour your emotions into, because they may end up in a place